I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here. This follows these first talks, direct talks between Russia and Ukraine since March of 2022. Just 1 month after the war started, and now 3 years later, the two adversaries meet again in Istanbul again, where they previously met for talks. These talks come about after the 11th of May, where Putin rejected a 30-day ceasefire proposed by the United States, obviously the mediator of this conflict, and Ukraine. Putin rejected that idea. Instead, he said, let's meet in Istanbul to hold direct talks, where he said he would be present. Moving over to the 14th of May, where US President Donald Trump has floated the possibility of joining the talks. He is now obviously in Qatar. We then move on till today, the 15th of May, where Putin, the Russian president, instead sent his delegation, a no-show from the Russian president. We are joined by Rubinder Sachdev, foreign affairs expert, to discuss this in further detail. Rubinder, thank you very much for joining us. The Russian president put forward this meeting in Istanbul after rejecting the 30-day ceasefire proposed by both the United States and Ukraine. What message does it send that he is not in attendance and instead has sent what some critics are calling a low-level delegation to these serious talks?
I think perhaps, two or three messages. One is that in some ways it is Putin who is, if not calling the shots, but setting the tempo. I mean, between the various players, be it Trump or Erdogan or Zelensky, it's Putin who is, let's say, setting the agenda. So that's one, he's the one orchestrating. Everyone is in a way looking up at him. Is he coming, not coming? If he's coming, then, Trump says that he could also come down. So I think that is one. Second, it indicates that Russia is maybe not in a hurry to reach some kind or any kind of a, deal, or effectively something which could, end in, or which could conclude with some kind of a ceasefire or a 30-day ceasefire that has been talked about. So I think the broad message is that Putin seems to be playing or is playing the upper hand and keeping the other partners or other stakeholders on their tenterhooks. There's complete confusion, I think, right now in Istanbul or Antalya, where this is happening. Apparently, all delegations are waiting around with themselves. And there is some expectation that, tomorrow the talks could start, but would it mean that Putin could agree to be there tomorrow, and then Trump would come down from Qatar? So I think the next 48 hours could be very interesting.
Rubinder, thank you. We're also joined by Shruti Das Gupta, geopolitical expert. Shruti, what are your thoughts on the Russian president not attending the talks that he proposed? And does it put Zelensky on the upper hand or not?
Greetings to you and your viewers. It's very simple. Putin expressed willingness to negotiate, and he wanted to do it in person, but he does not recognize Zelensky as the leader of the Ukrainian people, because Zelensky failed to hold elections, while at the same time Putin held elections in Crimea and as well as the annexed regions of Ukraine. So as a leader, Zelensky looks much lesser compared to what Putin is. So Putin does not recognize Zelensky as a leader, and hence when Zelensky put out that leader level talk, nonsense out there, Putin just shot it out of the park and said, I'm not going to be part of something like this. If it's a leader level talk, then I'll talk to the leaders behind this war, and that is US President Trump. The NATO's insistence on having Ukraine part of their encirclement of Russia is one of the reasons why this war actually began. And so if it's going to be a leader level talk, he's going to talk to the leader behind the powers behind this entire war. So Putin is actually playing to his strength rather than to its weaknesses. The only one looking rather sad in this entire discourse is Zelensky himself.
Shruti, does it not say that the fact that he hasn't turned up to these talks that he proposed, does that mean that he doesn't truly want to end the war like he says he does, like he tells Donald Trump he does?
But there are very basic red lines for Putin when he's coming to these talking tables, whether by himself and people are saying he sent very low-level delegates to there. Let me point out that the person leading the delegation, and I've written down his name, is somebody called Medinsky, who is originally from the Soviet Ukrainian descent. So he is making a point whether you want to get it or not. So he's making his point very, very carefully. There are very red lines. He's not giving back Crimea. Crimea has, the people of Crimea have accepted him as the leader. He's not going to give back any of the land that he's annexed, because the entire point of this war was to not fall into the NATO trap and find himself encircled with hostile nations where US and EU European Union peacekeeping forces will keep their eye on Russian movements. He wants access to the Black Sea. He doesn't want to be locked behind this entire NATO, encirclement. So he is willing to talk, but he's only going to talk on his terms. He's not the loser here. The Russian economy, as you know, is booming. Yes, there are cost of life. There is definitely going to be any cost of life in any kind of war. But he is not willing to let go of the principle that they started this war was that you cannot plant NATO, basically NATO and US troops in my backyard. His stance is very clear. So as long as those red lines are not crossed, he is willing to negotiate peace. But as and when the longer the time goes on, more and more Ukraine loses. And of course, you've seen that the cost of war is mostly on the European nations. They have inflation, which is skyrocketing. They are unable to sustain this war, and they're looking weaker by the second. So for them, it is more important that this talks goes through rather than for Moscow itself.
Rabinda, I want to bring you back in. Do you